Hello everyone, and welcome back to a decaffeinated episode of Expletives Included. I'm also feeling a bit ill, possibly cold, possibly flu. All I know is that my throat is very croaky, and throughout the course of this video I'll probably, if I go on too long, I'll just continue to get worse and worse and worse. Again, Christmas introductions, because what else am I going to talk about for 12 days, every other day? Other than me, what else can I think to talk about? I could probably find things, but I'm much more interesting. I'm not good at being opposite of humble. I'm not good at boasting and stuff. But that's, I guess, a different time. 2 days ago I talked about Magic the Gathering. The deck that I made went okay. It's, again, I'm not used to kind of building decks for that kind of forum. It did very poorly in 1v1, as I knew it would. It shouldn't have even have been on the cards, as it were. But no, we'd had like a big multiplayer game. I think I did win. Although, yeah, it went bad several times. But you know, that's kind of the part of having a big deck and building for free for all. You have lots of bombs. You always come back. And then, like, today I'm just going to talk about video games. If you've seen anything by Expletives Included, then you've probably figured out that we are big on video games here. Especially me. I say especially me. I think, well, especially me. So, what to say other than what's already been said? I guess just my history with video games. I consider myself pretty good. I don't think I would ever kind of go into a professional circuit. The only kind of professional game that I've ever really played is League of Legends, rather recently, and I didn't do very good. And I know that it's awful to kind of blame your computer and blame lag, but the fact is, I don't have a computer, and I haven't for a very long time. I've got a laptop that, even when I was playing League, was probably at least 5 years old at that point. I'm looking, it's right here. It's not good. I do hope to get a new computer at some point, and I might start playing League again, and then who knows, maybe I will be better. I'll certainly never have the experience of jumping out, using an ultimate, freezing for 2 seconds, 2 or 3 seconds, and thinking, well, why am I dead? But that was my fault, mainly for playing squishy characters. It always seemed to go better when I played Garen. It doesn't matter if you lag a bit with Garen. But I didn't want to talk about League of Legends. I was talking about my history. I was going to go right back to the beginning, to when I was a young child of 3 years old. The first home console, the first console that I ever had was a SNES. And I didn't really have it. It was my brother's. But I was kind of more into it than he was. I was the indoorsy type, he was outdoorsy. But I remember, this is kind of like several houses ago, and yes, I'm 23 now, so I've been playing video games for 2 decades, and hopefully many decades more. I remember, like, the first game that we had, or the one that I always played the most, was Super Mario All-Stars, which kind of coloured my opinion of Mario in a very good way, but that's because they kind of standardised the look. So when I played like the original NES versions of Super Mario Bros. Or Super Mario Bros. 2, Doki Doki Panic, or Super Mario Bros. 3, kind of going back to the SNES versions, which is kind of all you can get on the 3DS, the 3DS eShop, it just looks really weird. It's because I kind of grew up, like, 5 years, probably like the first quarter, 25% of my gaming history has been like Super Mario All-Stars. and I think I still haven't even beaten Lost Levels. I could go back. I could probably beat it now. I've improved as a gamer, let's say. But yeah, that's like a massive portion. I remember, like I said, I started when I was 3. I remember when I was 8, I was still playing that. I was, um, oh, I'm still playing it now. Like I said, I bought the eShop versions, and I do play it from time to time. Super Mario Bros. 3 has always been my favorite. Something about it, I don't know, just I guess I don't know. It had a world map which just felt so fun because you could always see like where you were and kind of learn things and knew how far you were going along. Rather than so it's like you're in world 6 or whatever, which was the cloud one. I don't know. I'm bad with remembering things, but I can tell you like what all the worlds were probably. There was Big World was my favourite, where everything was big. Because I think you've got a Tanuki suit in that one as well, and Tanuki suits are just always awesome. Again, Tanuki suit was my favourite item, and I'm just talking about games again. And I remember other things. I had lots of games. My brother kind of sold them all, like they were his, and he kind of had like this entrepreneurial stage when he was growing up, where he did lots of things. He sold comics, he sold our games, he sold whatever he could. He also, well, again, not important, but I did like have a wide library. I remember. Let's see, this was when I was living there, so I guess 8 or 9ish. I remember we had Mortal Kombat, which I think was rated 15, and that was really fun. It was on the SNES, so it was like graded less harshly on other systems because it didn't really have the blood and gore. It was all kind of grey. I didn't really take any of it in. I don't remember anything of the game even all that much. I just remember that I enjoyed it, and then my mum kind of thought that no, this is too violent. We're going to get rid of that game, and I think me and my brother just tried to. We tried to. We tried to be diplomatic. We tried to convince her that no, it's fine. We were fine playing the game. It's not that bad, but no, she kind of got rid of it. And I'm kind of glad that she did because now I have this thing that I can kind of fall back on where like people say it's like kids are playing all these violent video games. It's like yeah, and like parents, if they take notice of what their kids are doing, then they'll stop it. They might not realize. I remember like back in those days it did have like the 15 rating, I think, but it was a lot less pronounced. I think it is like only recently that they've had like the same film certifications. I remember there was a SmackDown versus Raw, or is it had The Rock on the cover. It was a PlayStation wrestling game, and on the back it had like a very tucked away, very tiny PlayStation games. You can find one. I think they're all the same. Like age rating on the back, and it was quite tucked away. But that's kind of like one of my early memories of gaming, like when I was 8. So, actually no, because that was before I remember actually completing Super Mario Bros. 3. So maybe even more than 25% of my gaming life can be dedicated to Smash Bros. Smash Bros? No, All Stars. Blame it on the illness. And I don't know, like other early memories I have are kind of I had a neighbour they had a daughter who was quite a bit older, so she would babysit quite a lot, and she had a SNES, and she had Star Fox or Star Wing, the SNES version, and I would always kind of try to go around and play on Star Wing because it's just an amazing game, and it was so fun, and it was one that I didn't have, and I remember just being really kind of shocked and there's all of this wonder. It's like, this is a game that I haven't played before. I didn't know this existed. Which is different to now, where I just there are hundreds, thousands of games, but back then it was like, no, there are just 5 games. There are 5 games that I own. There are no more. What do you mean there's 6? And then and not only that, but you can only play it like at these very small windows, and that's just so much more torture. Although again, like when I was younger, there were kind of lots of limitations. I remember, like when I was very young, I don't remember, but certainly like 10 to 13, maybe a bit longer, possibly like up to 16. Um, Although, well, I kind of had the limitation where I was only allowed to play for 45 minutes, then I'd have to have a 15-minute break, and then if I wanted to, I could go for another 45 minutes, and that would be it. And an hour and a half a day is still, it sounds like quite a lot. Um, but even then, I could probably maybe steal a bit longer just on the Game Boy. Um, so yes, the SNES, it was amazing. It was like my favourite console. It's what I grew up with for so many years. And then my second console was the PlayStation. And I can't remember. I'm actually struggling to remember. I know that the PlayStation was after the SNES. The PlayStation was the same era as the N64. Because I remember there's this history that the SNES was going to have a disc system, or the next console was going to be a disc system. But kind of last minute or somewhere through production, they kind of said, it's like, no, we're not going to do discs, we're going to stay with cartridges. And Squaresoft at the time had been working on Final Fantasy VII, which needed to be on disc because it just kind of was too large for a cartridge-based system. Something along those lines. And so they got kind of upset, and like people who, well, because they'd been working on this game and it literally couldn't be released on the N64. And I think there were people who were developing like the disc-based system of the N64 left and made the PlayStation, and then Squaresoft went with them, and that's why Final Fantasy kind of emigrated from Nintendo for quite a while. But yes, that was my second console, and the first game was Spyro, which is an amazing game. It's just such a great platformer. I still haven't done 100%. I think I always got to like 98 or 99. There was this one level which it was like all of these wizards, and it was like a magic world, and it was one which had loads and loads of kind of charge ramps, is what I used to call them. They were more kind of slides. You always went down them and you charged, and you kind of went supercharged, and you could glide. You could essentially fly if you timed it right. And there was just some. It was really disorientating, but there was this really high balcony that I imagined you could only get to with these supercharged super glides. And I could never do it, and I always got to 98, 99% just because I couldn't figure out what to do. Again, I was young when I played this. Even going back to it, I don't think I have gone back to it. I know I've played Spyro 2. Actually, no, I did go back to it. I was in a bad way when I went back to it, and I kind of didn't continue on just because I couldn't. Enough of that. I remember I actually played recently on the PlayStation 3 a download of Spyro 2, and just thinking, this is so much worse. Like Spyro 1 was just, you could roll, you could like dodge to the side in Spyro 1, and they completely removed that in the second Spyro, and it's like, and the camera angles just somehow didn't work as well, and I don't know why. It seemed like, and the characters were worse as well in Spyro. It just completely went downhill. It was still kind of fun, but no. Yes, and then after Spyro, we kind of got all of the other games. I can't remember what, but I think it might have been Tekken 3. That was like my introduction to Tekken. That was a good time to kind of come into it. It wouldn't have been my first tournament fighter. My first tournament fighter was again on the SNES. It was the Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one. But then what happened after the PlayStation? That was probably around the same time that I got the Game Boy. Actually, no, I think my brother got a Game Boy Pocket. Or I got the Game Boy Pocket. Again, I think several of these consoles were either kind of joint. They were for both of us, or they were for Chris, and I just kind of adopted them. And I remember I can't remember how many games we had, but there was two. We had Super Mario Land, which I think I defeated once. And again, like that was such an amazing achievement because I think I've gone back to play it now, and it's still ridiculously hard. But now I beat that game when I was young, and it's just it was amazing. And then there was Metroid 2 on the Game Boy. I think it was Metroid 2. That was a very hard game. I've got it on the 3DS again. That's another game that I've rebought, even though I might somewhere still have the original cartridge. What I wanted to do when I replayed that, because I never did it when I was a kid, I just could never find the way forward. It was just always so, I don't know, it was big and it was mysterious and there was no map. So when I went back to it, I wanted to do it again and I wanted to kind of draw the map out, just kind of be old school, kind of beat it that way. But I think I still confused myself. I wasn't great at mapping, and I kind of just put it down and started playing other games and just haven't got back to it. I imagine it's not like a particularly hard game. It is difficult and it is tough, but not kind of deadly so. The challenge is kind of finding your way around. It's exploring. It's learning the environment. So you could easily do it if you just went online, like found a map done by someone decent, and just kind of find. Being able to know where you are essentially is how you win that game. So yeah, with the help of the internet or a Nintendo Power article, I imagine it would be quite easy, but as it stands, no, I still haven't completed that. And another one, I think it was Wave Race. I think that's an old game. I think I had that on the PlayStation as well. But yeah, that's an old game. I can't, because I don't think you won that game. It was just like series of tournaments and races, basically like Mario Kart. You can't really win Mario Kart. You can, but yeah. Again, so still quite Nintendo focused with the Game Boys and the SNES, but PlayStation, I think I did prefer the SNES, but the PlayStation was always there as well. It was always good. I think after that we had a PlayStation 2. That might have been something that my brother bought. And then at that point, I think that was kind of like when parents stopped buying consoles. Oh, apart from the Game Boy Advance SP. And then DS. I think DS was a Christmas present as well. But home consoles, the kind of idea was, well, you've got enough. It doesn't... Which I suppose we kind of did, but you want new games. You always need to have the new one. So after that, after the PlayStation 2, we went on to the Xbox 360, which I bought for myself. And most recently, the PlayStation 4, which again I bought for myself. I kind of wanted to do like a proper history. I probably should have done a bit more prep, but I can't really. I'm running up to 20 minutes. I wanted to make this one shorter, but I've rambled on. So I guess as a timeline, that's fairly. Well, it explains it. That's my timeline of consoles. Kind of handhelds, a bit disjointed. I've got a PSP as well, which I bought for myself, and then I had to rebuy. I can't remember. There was, at one point, I was kind of made to choose which console I had to give up before we got a new one, and I chose the SNES because we only had one controller, and that was kind of broken, and it was at a point where I didn't kind of realise that you can just kind of go online and buy these things, so I thought it's like, and because you couldn't go into a shop, the SNES was an old console by then, we'd had it for many years, so I knew that you couldn't kind of go into Game or Game Station and buy a new SNES controller, so I thought, well, I can't play this console, so I guess we'll have to give up this part of my childhood. And it was really good condition as well, the console. And Super Mario All-Stars, great game. I have recently, a while ago, I bought myself a SNES again, just because I want a SNES. And I bought like a load of games, but I still don't have All-Stars, because if you actually like go around convention circuits, which is where I've bought most of my SNES games, All Stars is quite expensive for a SNES game, I imagine. Well, actually no, because there are some like crazy expensive ones. But you know, you expect to pay around like 5 to 10. I think All Stars was around 20, 25. It's definitely up there. What else? What other historic events in gaming happened in my life? I remember. I don't know. I suppose I could. I don't really want to talk much about the friends that I made through kind of gaming because a lot of them I just kind of fallen out of touch with just because life happens. But yeah, like a good friend, like probably the best friend of my childhood I've met. I couldn't remember how we met, but we were just like talking about it at one point, and apparently it was just at primary school. I just went around asking people if they had a PlayStation. He said yes, and just kind of all went from there. And he did have like he and his brother had like all of the consoles they had, and I would just go around to their house and just kind of spend all day. We would just play multiplayer games, play kind of take it in turns. I remember it was his brother was like the first introduction I had to RPG Maker when it was on the PlayStation. I played like a thing that he made, just like this small thing. It was like my first introduction to Final Fantasy Tactics. I'm not sure if that was like before or after I'd been introduced to Tactics Advance, but I just remember like thinking that's like an amazing game, and like I always wanted to have it, and and then at some point I got it on the PSP and just it's amazing. I think it was kind of like the GameCube era, so like lots of memories from that time are on the GameCube. Although we would always do other things. I think the SNES came out more than once. It came out a lot. Certain things just like I remember I was talking in another video about Super R-Type. That's a game that we played a lot. That was great. I think I'm not sure how many times we beat it, but it's really tough because you're limited on lives, and there's a real challenge there. And like actually being able to say that you beat the game means something. Like before, I was just rambling about beating Super Mario Land, and it's like yes, beating a game now. It's what you do. That's just kind of how games work. But back when I was young, back in the good old days, beating a game was an achievement. Not these cruddy new achievements, not these Xbox achievements or these PlayStation trophies. It actually meant something. And my throat is actually getting very sore now. So yeah, like those friends of mine that I've met, like when I was young, growing up, really shaped me. I've talked about them before, just like introduced me to anime, introduced me to like this wider world of gaming. I owe a lot to them. And again, it's awful that we just kind of moved apart. Again, any kind of games that I've played, because there are lots of people who just have like games that kind of define childhood, and I suppose I kind of said that Super Mario All Stars, and I suppose that's kind of why I love sprites, and the colourful sprites, colourful games. I don't think I played like many Final Fantasy games when I was quite young. Again, like these two friends of mine were big on Final Fantasy, and that's kind of like what got me into the series. But I've always like preferred just like the visual stylings of 1 through 6, just because I guess it's reminiscent to All Stars. It's very colourful. It's very imaginative. It's just Final Fantasy 7 it's very blocky and pixely, not in the good way. It's like with sprites, it's like they're pixels and they're supposed to look like that, and they're built around that. Whereas Final Fantasy 7 looks like it didn't want to be. It wanted to be smoother. It didn't want to be pixelated. Like maybe this PlayStation 4 version that's coming out, maybe yes, no, will kind of remedy all that. And I'm not sure like what that game would look like. And I suppose it would just look like what 15's going to look like, which is very smooth and very nice. But it's, I think things kind of, you lose a bit out of like what a video game is when you go for photorealism, because it's kind of real. What you really want is something jovial and fun and pixelated, and yeah, a lot of my kind of idea of what a great game is based around like these early years of All Stars. I suppose that's what I'll say. Just All Stars really influenced my idea of games. Mainly Super Mario Bros. 3. That's one that I always loved the most. Although I think when I was younger, it was Doki Doki Panic was the only one that I could beat. That I beat more than once. Actually, no. Actually, no. I remember another anecdote, and again, I'm running on long. As I said, I wanted to make this short. An anecdote. Um, I just couldn't figure out how to beat Bowser in Super Mario Bros. 3. And there were no like life cheats or anything, and I remember I died a lot, so it was always. But you could save, so that was like the one saving grace. Um, but I made like such an effort just to have one peace sign. I can't remember what it's called. It was just like it gave you like your tail so that you could fly, and you had an unlimited kind of charge meter, so you could just fly indefinitely. And I came up against Bowser, and I just didn't know what to do. I tried jumping on his head. It was just like fly up, jump, jump, jump. I just couldn't work out that you just have to get him to smash the floor, and I think I must have at some point, but I just couldn't dodge out of the way fast enough, and he kept killing me. And even with like the ultimate power up, I couldn't beat Bowser. And I remember that was like something that my brother said, just like, come on, you have to be able to do that. You've got the peace sign. How can you still not beat Bowser? And I have done several times since then, but just like the first time I came up against him, just I just couldn't win. I just couldn't figure it out, and it's fun for me. It's reminiscing. It's nostalgic. Again, I've almost rambled as long as Keir did about books, so I'll call it a day. And thank you for listening. Hopefully it's been a bit interesting, but I doubt it. I doubt many people get this far. Thank you if you did.